actually I'm going to talk about sustainable development. And all of you are aware of sustainable development. It is not a new topic, but I'm going to talk about, give you some clarification about the sustainable development goals and where India stands. And first part, we'll have some little bit of theoretical part of sustainable development. And the second lecture will be more of where India stands in terms of attaining sustainable development goals. So, I would like to bring in how this sustainable development has come into the prominence or recognition. So, what is the kind of paradigm shift that has taken? So, which brought in the what is called the sustainable development. So, I have placed them in different phases. See, for example, in 20s and 40s, the concentration is more on economic and cultural progress and more on exploitation of natural resources. You can keep it in mute so that sounds won't be heard. Yeah, that is better. So I'm bringing in the paradigm shift which resulted in sustainable development. So as you look at, from 1920s and 30s and 40s, the focus is more on economic development and growth and by exploiting the natural resources. So there was never a thinking about how long the resources are going to last and are these resources going to, are they going to be reproduced. So such thinking was not there. The focus was only on economic growth, so with using the natural resources. So, and in the later stage, in 40s and 60s, you find that the industrialization has taken place and people gave more importance to industrialization. So industrialization is identified as a vehicle for economic development. So that was the paradigm. See, why I'm talking about paradigms is each paradigm will result in different kind of prescriptions, different kinds of prescriptions. See, for example, a particular paradigm in economic, in the earlier paradigm, that is in economic growth is given importance. So where, the paradigm is use resources and produce. So accordingly, the public policy is also promoting the use of natural resources and economic development. Whereas in the second paradigm, that is 40s and 60s, it is a paradigm of industrialization. So everybody thought that industrialization is the only vehicle for economic development. And more governments have given more and more importance to what is called the industrialization. So, and industrialization, it doesn't happen just like that. So industrialization in the process of using the natural resources and producing some commodities, industrialization also results in using the environmental resources and giving something back to the environment, which is not very congenial for the protection of environment. But I'll come to that later. But in 40s and 60s, the main focus is on industrialization and producing more goods and services by using the mechanization. So that is how actually large production has taken place. So, but 60s and 70s, the focus is more on economic progress come rural development. Because by 60s and 70s, people realized that the planners realized that, the kind of industrialization, it is limited only to some areas and it is leading to greater disparity because obviously industries doesn't want to produce or establish their own establishment where there are no connectivities. So then what happened is this industrialization led to greater disparities in income, and because concentration is only in particular areas, so there was a need to look at the rural areas and rural development. So that is how 60s and 70s there was a focus on the rural development and other issues. So whereas 70s we developed what is called the integrated area approach. So when integrated area approach, agriculture production and geographic equity, so people are focusing more on, it's more of integrated area development. So developing the entire area. So whereas 80s, what happened is, again, there was a paradigm shift in 80s. people were looking at participatory development, because all the while development is top-down approach. So where planners sit and they prepare the plans and they will be implemented without the participation of the end users. Whereas in 80s, the focus was shifted from the top-down approach to the bottom-up approach. So that is what is called the participatory development. In participatory development, the crux of participatory development is development should take place with the people. So the end user should be involved in the planning or in every part of the development process. So the users should be, everybody should be part of this process. So that is what is called the participatory development. And we got the reversal of top-down approach. And we can say that our Panchayat Raj institutions is a kind of a bottom-up approach, because Gram Panchayat is a major, the lowest administrative setup, from which you have Taluk Panchayat and Jilla Panchayat and state. So that is how actually 80s was more on participatory development. Whereas 90s actually brought in what is called the sustainable development. The sustainable paradigm came in 1990s. And just then people started looking at that development is not an ongoing process. It doesn't continue forever, and there is a limit for the usage of resources. So many environmental economies and what is called natural resource economics. So many thinkers and researchers have brought in the idea that development is not going to last forever. We are using the resources in the similar way, that without bothering about the future generation. So that paradigm is what is called the sustainable development paradigm. So, in 1992, UN Conference on Environment and Development, it is also known as Earth Summit. So this Earth Summit gave and also in Brundtland Report. So Brundtland Report is this also contributed for the thinking of sustainable development. So Brundtland Report is a report commissioned by UN. So this commission was asked to formulate global agenda for change. So that is how actually our Brundtland Report has become a what we say is a pillar for the thinking of the sustainable development thinking. So what this Brundtland Report, actually Brundtland, she was the Prime Minister of Norway. She was twice or thrice, she was I think 3 times or 2 times. She was the Prime Minister of Norway, and she was also Minister of Environment. So she was invited by UN to prepare a report on the environment and development. So by then people realized that there is a trade-off between environment and economic development. So because of that, development is not going to be sustainable forever. So then what she has done is, Brundtland has done an excellent job, and she came out what is called a report, and report which is known by her own name, that is called the Brundtland Report. So what this the commission, what the UN Commission has asked is, prepare a global agenda for change. So she was given the task to prepare a global agenda for change. So this report laid the foundation for the 1992 Earth Summit. So in 1992 Earth Summit, this report was discussed and several decisions were taken. So this Brundtland Report is the foundation stone for the Earth Summit and the later decisions that are made by the countries, and many countries have adopted this. And taken place because this Earth Summit took place in Rio de Janeiro. So there the countries have made what is called the Rio Declaration, and the Commission on Sustainable Development was also established after the Earth Summit. So the Brundtland Commission report, if anybody is interested, you can Google. Nowadays, it is not very difficult to search for any material. So it is also there, and if you are interested, you can read that report. So that is 90s actually. Earth Summit, or the Earth Summit is the main foundation for the thinking on sustainable development. And the 1930 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and 17 sustainable development goals and 169 targets and 230 indicators. They were all developed in the developed after the Earth Summit, and now we are talking about the sustainable development goals. So then I'll give a little bit clarification about what is sustainable development. So sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. That's how actually Brundtland has given the definition. So as I was talking about, if you keep on producing commodities using the natural resources, see among the natural resources also, there are some resources which are renewable and whereas some resources are non-renewable. So renewable resources, even for the non-renewable resources, the more you use now, less is available for future, because it is not going to renew. Whereas in the case of renewable resources also, there is a limit, because the rate at which the renewable resources get generated may be different from the rate at which we are using it. So the rate at which we are using is more than the rate at which the natural rate of growth. Even any natural resource, there is a natural rate of growth. So if the rate of our utilization is more than the rate at which they regenerate, again there is a gap. So because of these things, because of the nature of these natural resources, there are several other characteristics of natural resources. So because of that, if you use now, less is available for the future. So that kind of development is not a sustainable development. So what how she defined is, it is the development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. So this definition is the crux of the sustainable development, and you can see that it emphasizes on three important things. So one is intergenerational equity. So intergenerational equity means ensuring that present development does not jeopardize the future's ability to meet its needs. Means intergenerational, this generation and this generation, the next generation, both should have equal opportunities. So that is what is equity. So both should have equal opportunities. So if the sustainable development will take care of intergenerational equity. And second one is the sustainable development. The emphasis is on interconnectedness. See, sustainable development, what was found by the Commission and Brundtland and other members, is that sustainable development happens only through interconnectedness. See, world is highly interconnected. It is not that you address one issue and everything gets solved. It is not like that. And when you address one issue, it is likely to have a negative impact on another issue. So everything is interconnected. For example, health, education. So they're all, and empowerment, they're all interconnected. So the sustainable development definition also talks about interconnectedness, and interconnectedness means what? It requires a holistic approach. So when everything is interconnected, so you should have a holistic approach. I can give our human beings our own body as a system. So in our body, when something happens to one part of the body, the entire system gets affected. So to attend to that, you need a holistic approach. So similarly, sustainable development also, it requires a holistic approach. And why it needs an holistic approach is because there is an interplay between environmental, social, and economic factors. So I'll come to that later. I'll talk about the environmental, social, and economic factors more. So here the important thing is that when we are talking about sustainable development, the sustainable development needs a holistic approach, because all the issues are interconnected. And third one is collective action. Sustainable development calls for collective action. Not one country, not one district, or not one state can do it by itself alone, because there are public goods which need attention. There are public goods which government also has to provide. So there are several things. So it is important to have collective action. That is at the national level. But at the international level, countries depend on each other for several things. Some countries may have economic students, you know about it. So some countries will have advantage in the production of certain goods, certain services, and they export and they import what they like that. The countries are much the collective action is needed. For example, to address the global issues like global warming and climate change. So such kind of things you can only address by collective action, by coming together. So what the sustainable development asks for is that it ensures intergenerational equity, and it is interconnected, and it asks for what is called the collective action. So environment and society there are three important pillars of the what is called the sustainable development, as I told earlier. So we can also call them dimensions. So one is environmental and social and economic. So in the environmental dimension, the Brundtland Commission was the first time Brundtland Commission spoke about these three pillars of sustainable development. As I told you, they identified that sustainable development calls for interconnectedness and system approach. So the environmental pillar looks at the commitment to protect the environment and measuring the business carbon footprint. Because as you know, there is a trade-off between environment and economic development or the production. So environment pillar emphasizes on protecting the environment, and social pillar. The social pillar it is the attitude of equality and respect for individual rights. And what are the other? Acknowledging social issues and promoting social solidarity and fostering a safe workplace. So these are the social pillars. Unless these are addressed, you can't attain a sustainable development. And similarly, economic pillar or economic dimension. So economic dimension talks about improving the standard of living of the people, not necessarily employees, stakeholders and everybody. It also refers to the efficient. Why we need to emphasize on this is because this economic dimension also talks about the efficient use of resources, efficient use of company assets, or it could be economy. So basically the economic dimension talks about the efficient use of resources. So for sustainable development, we need to address the environmental issues, social issues, and also the economic issues. See, these are the pillars of sustainable development. So adoption of these three pillars of sustainable development has a large impact on our future. So how it affects our future is, so when you address the economic development and also only social progress, it may lead to what is called a fair world. So economic development and social progress. So as I discussed earlier, social progress also calls for a fair world. So if you address only economic development and social progress, you may have a fair world, but we don't know whether it is sustainable or not. Similarly, if you address only social progress and environmental responsibility or environmental issues, you will get a livable world. Certainly, you will have a happy planet, but you don't know whether people will have enough to eat or not. So that is, if only these two are addressed without addressing the economic development. On the other hand, if you address only economic development and environmental responsibility, you will again have a viable world, but you don't know whether it is fair or not. So in order to have a fair world, which is livable and which is viable, so the world is not only fair, ensuring intergenerational equity and everything, not only a fair world, it should also be a livable world. Everybody should be able to live. And a viable world means a world which continues forever. So that is why all these things, if all these issues are addressed, if all these pillars are taken into consideration, so that leads to what is called the sustainable development. So not addressing any of these things. See, earlier we never bothered about environmental responsibility. We only bothered about economic development. And we didn't bother about social progress also. But later on, social progress came about. So fair world has come. But we don't know whether it is a livable world, or viable world. So now people are addressing all these three pillars of sustainable development, and this is the contribution of Brundtland for the thinking on sustainable development. So generally we talk about sustainable, everybody talks about this is not sustainable. Sometimes even our general conversation also we say that it is not sustainable, it doesn't last long, like that. So in the crux of sustainable development is the development which continues and which gives equal opportunity for this generation and also for the next generation. So to do that, what we have to do is we have to focus on economic development, of course. We should also focus on social progress, and also we should have the environmental responsibility. So we will sustainable development goals, and the sustainable development goals, they are also known as global goals, and they were adopted by all the United Nations members in 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. See why I'm talking, why the sustainable development goals have all this end poverty and protect the planet, because Brundtland Commission, they have identified that the poverty has a major impact on environment. So poverty negatively affects the environment. So it is very important for the sustainable development to end poverty by whatever is the means. And by ending the poverty, it is possible to protect the planet and ensure happiness and peace for everybody. So that is why sustainable development goals, they call for an action to end poverty. And United Nations General Assembly adopted 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and 17 Sustainable Development Goals as universal. They are actually, these goals are not just simple goals. They are transformative development strategy. Their goals not just only to attain end poverty and and malnutrition. They are not just only goals to be attained, but they are also, that is also they are the transformative development strategy. See, the sustainable goals are developed in such a way that if they are, when they are attained, it will lead to what is called the transformative development. It transforms the development from low to high, and giving an opportunity for everybody in the economy, everybody on the earth to have a peaceful life. So that is why sustainable development are not just simply goals, they are the transformative development strategy. So then 2030 agenda commits the global community to achieve sustainable development in these three dimensions, as I told you, in a balanced and integrated manner. So what 2030 agenda says is that goals are to be attained, and but they should be attained in a balanced and integrated manner. It is not that you attain environmental development. It is not that you focus only on social development. It is important to address all these three dimensions in a balanced and integrated manner. You can't leave anything by itself. So there is in general widespread acceptance of why the integration of these three dimensions are necessary, but there are also many questions how. See, after understanding this, I know for sure that all of you also appreciate that it is important to address the social issues, environmental issues, and economic issues. See, all of us agree that they are to be integrated. All these three dimensions are integrated for sustainable development. But the question is how to make it. How to make it, because how this integration is to be achieved. As I told you, there are always trade-offs. Too much of focus on one dimension may deplete the resources for the other dimension. So attaining a balance among all these three dimensions is the real task for the planners. So it is important to have a balance between all these three dimensions. So the mission statement of sustainable development goals. So mission statement leads the strategy. So that's why I'm talking about the mission statement of sustainable development goals. So the mission statement of sustainable development goals is, it is a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all by 2030. That is a mission statement. All of you must have seen this everywhere. This is Sustainable Development Goals, and we have 16 Sustainable Development Goals. The seventh one is achieving all these 16 goals by partnerships for the goals. So what the 17th goal says is that you achieve all these dimensions through what is called the partnerships. So partnerships at the global level, partnerships at the national level, partnerships at the local level. So partnerships at the global level is partnerships between the countries and global institutions. For example, with the Indian government partnering with UNDP, partnering with IMF. So their partnerships are with other voluntary organizations. So that is the global partnerships. Whereas at the national level, you will have partnerships. For example, under corporate social responsibility, companies are partnering with voluntary organizations NGOs in the implementation of several development programs. So that is one kind of partnership. So what is sustainable? I'm very much impressed with this incorporating 17 as incorporating partnerships as a 17th goal, because what it says is that because all are interconnected and it is not possible for one agency to address all the issues. So there are several players and institutions in the process of promoting all these goals. So and when several institutions are involved in the promotion of all these goals, so naturally there should be what is called partnerships among them. By getting into partnerships, it is possible to increase the outcome of that, whatever is the issue that you are addressing. See, in health or education, or I will give more examples when we discuss them. So I just brought in all the sustainable development goals, same thing that is shown there. First goal is end poverty in all forms everywhere. And second one is hunger. There are economic components. So end hunger, achieve food security. And third is ensure healthy lives and promote well-being of all. And fourth is inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities and achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. So these are because there are different dimensions of the sustainable development. And goal 6 is ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation, natural resources. And seventh goal is access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable and modern energy, because energy is also both man-made and natural resources, and it needs to be utilized efficiently. So, and also access to affordable and reliable and sustainable. So that kind of energy sources are important. And the eighth goal is promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth. As I told you, this is the economic dimension of sustainable development. So what this goal 8 says is that the development should be inclusive, and it should be inclusive and productive employment. How it can be attained is by promoting productive employment and decent work for all. And goal 9 is build a resilient infrastructure. You know, infrastructure is very important. And in building infrastructure is, and presently also government is incorporating implementing several infrastructure projects. So build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. So this is very important, fostering innovation. Actually we are not doing very well in this particular goal. I'll come to that when we are talking about how far we have reached. Resilient infrastructure and inclusive and sustainable industrialization. So, and also fostering innovation. So, why innovation is important is innovation and environment are very closely related. See, in good olden days, the bikes, everybody uses bike nowadays. So, and even in the remotest villages also nowadays, people are using bikes. So earlier bikes were, you were able to travel with 1 liter of petrol. You were able to maybe travel 15 or 20 kilometers. Now with the improved four-stroke engines and all, so what happened is with 1 liter petrol, you can cover 40 kilometers or something like that. People claim, I think so. So what happens is now the efficiency of the petrol has increased and it has so many implications for sustainable development. One thing is petrol as a resource, it is conserved. And second thing is its environmental pollution has come down and people's expenditure has come down and it has an economic impact on the households. And also people are able to reach in time. So there are several implications of just one innovation. So such kind of innovations, there are many, and usable innovations are very important for sustainable development. And goal 10 is reduce inequality within and among countries. See, reducing inequality faster sustainable development, because when there are vast inequalities, so one section of people won't be contributing anything because entire thing is to be contributed only one particular section. So it is important, and also it may lead to some social issues. So it is important to reduce the inequality and make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, and resilient. This is also important for sustainable development because as urbanization is increasing, urban settlements are the harbingers, or they promote unrest and such, and also health issues. So sustainable development should focus on cities, making cities and human settlements inclusive and safe, and ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. So this is also, I think all of you also experience this. So present consumption pattern is not very sustainable. So use and throw, and where you throw, this is consumption as well as production. See, consumption is one thing, and how you dispose the waste, and they all have environmental implications. And goal 13 is take urgent action to combat climate change. Climate change is one of major issues. Hello, yaru? Who is speaking? Shall I stop? Okay. So take urgent action to combat climate change, and climate change affects agriculture. Climate change affects everybody, you and me. So climate change, we need to look at the climate change effects and how to reduce those adverse impact of the climate change, and conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. See, oceans and marine resources, they are natural resources. There is and these are used for transportation, these are used for livelihoods, fishing. So but unless they are sustainably used, so it will have an impact on the development. And protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, and sustainably using sustainably manage forests. See, these resources are terrestrial ecosystems, that is which are on the land. So they also need to be protected and river and halt the reverse the land degradation. So these resources, unless they are used efficiently, or they are used what to say, sensibly, so they also get depleted. And 16th goal is promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice. This is also very important. You may be having everything in the country, but if you don't have proper justice systems and institutions in place, so if they are not there, your development has no meaning. So goal 16 focuses on what is called the inclusive societies, peaceful societies. And 17th I have already explained, strengthen the means of implementation, revitalize the global partnerships. So as I told you, explained, 17th goal is important because 17th goal brings countries together, states together. So for sustainable development. So this is the relationship between sustainable development, green economy, and quality of life. Then, as I told you, because how to operationalize this, we spoke about sustainable development, and sustainable development should take care of present generation, future generation, and all that. But how to measure this? Where we are, how to measure this? So for that, some indicators have been developed. What are the environmental indicators are? Water usage, waste management, energy efficiency, water pollution levels, and levels of biodiversity, climate change. These are what is called the environmental indicators. So an indicator tells, if you have a number, if you have an indicator, so you can look at over a period of time what happened, whether we are progressing well or not. And also indicators can also be compared from one scenario to another scenario. So that is why indicators are very important. So environmental indicators of sustainable development are this, whereas the social indicators of sustainable development are poverty, hunger, health, education, gender equality, access to clean water and sanitation, and equity. So that is income disparities, and these are the social indicators. I am sharing the PPT. You can read at peace when you want to read later also. So economic indicators are obviously they are GDP, gross domestic product, growth, and employment, and innovation. As I told you, innovation, measuring the adoption of new technology and development of new products, and industrialization, trade, and financial flows. All these are what is called the economic indicators. This is, as I told you, there are 3 dimensions. So in that economic dimension, these are the indicators for economic development. So, but there are certain challenges in measuring the sustainable development. It is said easy. One can easily talk about sustainable development, this, that, and all. But how to measure this is a real problem. But people have come out with some kind of indicators. And there are certain challenges. So that is designing the indicators and also prioritizing and interpreting. So when you calculate a sustainable development index, if you give equal weightage for every dimension, or you give more weightage to a particular dimension, these are the decisions to be made. And collecting the data, and the data won't be available, and how to collect the data, what methodology is to be done. So there are several issues. Measurement challenges are there in measuring the sustainable development at the international level and at the national level also. Several attempts are made to arrive at appropriate indicators for measuring the sustainable development. And India has adopted Indian version of sustainable development goals. I'm sharing some material for you. Those who want to read further, you can go through that. In that particular report, they have mentioned about what is the global measurement, and how India modified it. Many of the indicators we used as they are, but only in certain places we made some changes. So how to attain this? What kind of policy shifts are needed for sustainable development? So sustainable development, just like that, it doesn't happen. You need policy. Policies operationalize government's intention, and policies operationalize what the government wants to achieve. So through policy, it is possible to reach whatever goals are to be reached, because policies affect everybody and policies are target oriented. So what are the policy shifts that are needed for the sustainable development? So normative shifts needed for integration. So as I told you, the sustainable development calls for greater integration and greater partnerships and collectiveness and system thinking. So that is why some normative shifts are needed. So United Nations Economic and Social Commission emphasizes the need for 4 normative changes in policy to promote integration. First one is social justice and ecological sustainability must become the fundamental policy objective rather than marginal. So what it says is that social justice and ecological sustainability, that is environmental dimension of sustainable development and social dimension of sustainable development. So these should become fundamental. It's not the economic dimension that should be given greater importance. So normally economic dimension is given greater importance and our first priority. Okay. Yeah. So 1 minute. Yeah. So what it says is that it is important to give first priority for the social justice and ecological sustainability. So second one is the kind of shift that is needed is shift from a predominantly short-term policy horizon to one that seeks long-term benefit for all. See, we should completely shift from what is called the short-term policy horizon to long-term benefits. See, short-term policy horizon, what it says is, it will only take into consideration what is going to happen, what is to be achieved only in short term. But what is more important for sustainable development is to have a long-term benefits in mind. So what it is going to happen, how it is going to affect after 15 years, 20 years or 30 years or after 40 years. So that kind of long-term policy horizon is very, very important. So the means policymakers should shift from short-term policy horizon to long-term policy horizon. And third one is replacing gross domestic product as a measure of progress that encompasses three dimensions of sustainable. So what it says is that we should stop looking at the progress of the country by looking at GDP, but we should look at the sustainable development of that country. So because when you are looking at the sustainable development, it also includes all the three dimensions. So what shift is expected is that we should shift from GDP to the sustainable development. And recognition that the resources of the planet are not limitless and that resource constraints cannot always be addressed by technology. This is very important. So normative thinking, these are norms. These are what we are talking about. These are the norms. So what the last one is that everybody should know that the resources are not limitless, means there is a limit for the resources on the planet. And second one is the resource constraints cannot always be addressed by technology. This is very important. People think that everything can be solved by technology, but technology is not going to solve all the constraints. It is the human beings who have developed the technology. It is the human beings who are going to use the technology. So their mental, their normal, their normative, their norms and their behavior, their attitude, that will have an influence on the sustainable development. So this needs to be recognized. See, in Japan and particularly in Japan, school itself, kids are, even when they are in school itself, they know about the sustainable development, why they have to use the resources scarcely, and what should be done. So if it is inculcated at the school level itself, so that the change will take place, and the technology also goes hand in hand. So only technology or only attitude doesn't lead to sustainable development, and the recognition that technology alone cannot solve. Even if you develop the greatest technology which saves the resources also, but the person using the technology, if they are not oriented, it is not going to save the resources. So what it says is that the normative thinking, how it should change is that one thing is that resources are limited, and second thing is that it is not possible to solve everything by technology. So that also we need to take into consideration. But there are policy conflicts. Means one policy may have a negative impact on the other. So public policy either implicitly or explicitly prioritizes investments. See, as you know, when government makes a policy, so policy is operationalizing the objectives of the government. If government wants to promote a particular area, So accordingly, they will make a policy or particular line of production. Accordingly, they will make the policy. But what happens is when public policies are made, they prioritize the economic activity without regard for the impact on the stocks of natural, human, and social capital and negative externalities result such as pollution. See, if the policymakers are not taking into consideration the trade-offs or the policy conflicts, so it will lead to what is called the negative externalities, and pollution is one of the negative externalities, emissions and waste and social clashes, social conflicts. So some of them are due to the policy conflicts. So what it says is that the policymakers should look into consideration, take into consideration the if this policy is having any negative externality or negative impact. Say, for example, several things are happening even within the country. Also, you see, say, in several states, several conflicts are taking place, and some of them are due to the policy conflicts. So, and second one is, but policy responses to these phenomena that do not address the root cause of the policy conflicts, trade-offs ultimately will not support the achievement. See, when a policy is made, and if it is negatively affecting another variable or anything else, so it is important to look at the root cause of the policy conflict, whether the conflict is because of the policy or because of the implementation. Because sometimes policies may be very good, policies may be having a positive impact on this thing, but the what is called the implementation may be, or the way it has been implemented may be creating problems. So it is important to look at these two things, identify this. So as I told you, the shifts are needed, but making shift is not an easy thing. Making shifts in policy stance operational present significant challenges to policymakers. So what needs to be, I know it is not just policy, is not something on paper. So bringing it into reality is a challenge. So what is required is that reformed institutional frameworks and strengthen the capacity and political commitment and integrated vision of the sustainable future. So what is important is existing institutional framework needs to be looked at. Are we moving towards sustainable development or not? If necessary, we need to make a change in the institutional frameworks and similarly strengthening the capacities. So this is very important. People may be having good intentions, but they don't have the capabilities. They don't have the capacities. So that is important. And of course, on the top of all these things, political commitment is extremely important. So in a democracy like India, such a big country with so many parties and so things like that, and this political commitment plays a very, very important role. So whatever may be the government, the existing policy should be continuing, but it doesn't happen. It is only theoretical, it is possible. And the last one is inclusive and integrated vision. So policymakers should have an inclusive and integrated vision. So what is important is systems thinking. So as I told you, again, I'll come to that point of interconnectedness. So in economy, somewhere something is happening means it will have an impact on everybody. So for sustainable development, system thinking is very important. It is, see now, actually doctors are also being criticized that now doctors are looking too much into micro specialization. So dentist, dentist, of course, it is completely specialized. Even within the body also, you have gastroenterologist and whatnot. There are other several specializations. So they will only look at, pulmonologist looks at only the pulmonary part of your body and test this, that and all. So whatever they prescribe, they may have an impact on the other system. But so earlier, general physician, they used to look at all the different areas and prescribe. So that kind of system thinking is very, very important even for the sustainable development. So that leads to what is called the balanced investment. Balanced investment, there are different forms of capital. So different forms of capital is, one is man-made capital, natural capital, and social capital. So man-made capital is the what the country, what the production results in, that is the economy, that is money, that is man-made capital. And natural capital is the capital, that is natural resources. Natural resources is the natural capital. And social capital. Social capital is that, the bonding among the people. See, if I'm sick, I may be having money, but if I don't have anybody, neighbor, if I'm living alone, and I may be having money, but if I don't have a neighbor who comes and helps me, I may not be able to do anything. So that kind of bonding among within the society is very, very important. That is what is called the social capital. So synergies is the balanced investment across different forms of capital is very, very important. Promoting different capitals. So systems thinking as a foundation. This is about the system thinking. So multiple capital approach, because I will come to this multiple capital approach. System thinking, I already explained about this, improving this one. So then multiple capital approach is, as I told you, manufactured capital, natural capital, financial, human, and social capital. So association of chartered accountant, chartered certified accountant, they also included what is called the intellectual capital, another form of capital, because intellectual capital also contributes to the what is called the development or the sustainable development. So it is important, this multiple capital approach is very important for the sustainable development. So manufactured, of course, manufactured, that is goods and services, capital goods. And a natural capital is natural, I already told you. Financial capital and human capital. Social capital I explained. And intellectual capital also plays a very, very important role. So this approach is, there is one what is called the daily triangle. So this daily pyramid says it is a framework to understand the relationship between sustainable development and human well-being. So hierarchy where natural capital forms the base. So this is the ultimate means. So one is natural capital. So solar energy and all these things. And two is the built-in capital. See, like this, it depicts the hierarchy where natural capital forms the base and representing the ultimate means, and human well-being or ultimate ends sits on the top. So all these capitals are to be promoted in a systematic way. And there are also different arguments about the sustainability. One is called weak sustainability argument and one is called strong sustainability argument. What the weak sustainability argument says is, see here I explained to you about the capitals. So what weak sustainability argument says is that man-made capital and natural capital are substitutable. So substitutable, some must be non-declining. So, but whereas, in the strong sustainability argument, man-made and natural capital have limited substitutability. I'll explain what it means. So weak sustainability argument, what it says is that man-made capital and natural capital, they are substitutable. Means what it means is, if you have more man-made capital, if you have less natural capital also, it is okay, because man-made capital compensates the natural capital. They are completely substitutable. It is possible that you can substitute where there are no natural resources. You can use the synthetic resources. So, like now we have so many flavors. There are some of them are natural flavors, some of them are synthetic flavors. So it is nothing but man-made. So what the weak sustainability argument says is, those who believe that there is substitutability between the man-made capital and natural capital. So what they say is that these two are completely substitutable. If you have less natural capital also, it is okay. If you have more man-made capital, it can substitute the shortfall of natural capital. So this thinking, this argument, what are the implications? So why we look at the arguments is, but it gives some implications and the policy implications. So what it says is that here the implication is that because these two are substitutable, you don't have to worry about balancing both. And wherever you have advantage, you promote that capital, because promoting that capital will take care of the sustainable development, because these two are completely substitutable. Whereas those who propounded strong substitutability argument, they say that they are not substitutable. There is a limit. There is a limit. It is not possible to substitute every natural capital by man-made capital. So every man-made capital by natural capital, they are not substitutable, completely substitutable. So because of that, the implications of this is, those who believe in this kind of argument, they propose the policies promoting both the kinds of capitals. Both man-made capital is to be promoted, natural capital is also be carefully promoted in balance. So then only it is possible to achieve sustainable development. Whereas in the weak sustainability argument, the policy implications are that you can promote wherever you have the advantage. Some countries may have advantage in some. So these are the arguments. So let us make sustainability not just a subject, but a practice. Let it reflect in what we teach and how we lead and how we learn. I really like it because all of us are teachers and we all have the responsibility to contribute to the sustainable development. And now it is 11:03, and I would like to close this. Escape. Yeah. I will close this, and it is open for discussion. How to close this? Yeah, now you are free to ask me any questions if you have anything to ask. I'm sorry, I just rushed. I didn't discuss much with you. I didn't get to know more about you. I thought we will do it before the starting of the next